You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy M., where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy M.
Episode 45, Say Yes to the Universe with Dr. Elisse Wright. A super accomplished woman, Dr. Wright is a powerhouse that's focused on delivering workforce development and training out into the world. She shares her brave girl story growing up in Ohio as a woman of color that went down the path of an Ivy League undergraduate education at Yale, followed by a law degree from Stanford, and then took the road to a Ph.D. She shares all the ups and downs of her career as an attorney, a teacher, and then a businesswoman, and why she believes that you should always say yes to the universe. After being unexpectedly laid off and highly educated, Dr. Wright talks about listening to the whisper within and how that led her to where she is today, living her purpose as a successful entrepreneur. She literally began her business at her kitchen table, teaching other baby boomers how to use LinkedIn to reinvent themselves as they sought their next work opportunity. She shares some of her student success stories and how she's been able to position herself as a go-to LinkedIn expert. I love that she shares some of her best tips on using LinkedIn to grow your network, showcase your skills, and find a job. We talk about Pam Slim's book, Body of Work, finding the thread that ties your story together, and how critical it is to shift your mindset from that of a company employee to a more entrepreneurial view as you grow your body of work in the world. It's time to listen in to my conversation with Dr. Wright and learn about the power of LinkedIn as you work to showcase your unique brilliance and continue to say yes to what the universe sends your way. So welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. Today I have Dr. Elisse Barnes on with me, and she is a Maryland person that I was introduced to through a mutual acquaintance. And I just want to say welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So I've heard such great things about you, and I read your backstory a little bit, and I see that you went to Yale, you went to Stanford Law School, you have your Ph.D. from Ohio State, and I was just like in awe of all of the education that you have, not to mention all of the work that you're doing in the world of workforce development. So tell us a little bit about kind of how you got to where you are today, and kind of a little bit about what you thought maybe you were going to be doing when you were, just starting out and going to school.
Well, I think like most young women, I started out wanting to be, like boys want to be firemen and then they want to be policemen. And I think my first career was going to be a flight attendant or something. And then I realized I'd probably be bouncing between Columbus, Ohio, where I was born, and Indiana all the time, and that didn't sound very glamorous. So then I thought I wanted to go into communications, and I was raised by depression babies, so being an actress wasn't an option because I was going to have to take care of myself, and being a poet wasn't an option either, although I was poet laureate of my high school, and I've always been able to write very well. That's kind of been my skill. So I went to an all-girl private school, which was very interesting, coming from a very working class background, going to a school when someone, some of the girls talked about Missy, they were talking about their horse, or, for spring break, they were taking daddy's private jet to Aspen and Fort Lauderdale, and I was going for spring break to the high school that I would have normally gone to if I hadn't gone to private school, and hanging out there for a week. So that set me on the path to an Ivy League education. And at the time that I went to Yale, they had the best English department in the nation. So that was kind of a natural fit. And really had the best 4 years of my life there. I made my friends for life. And wouldn't change a thing. It really was just the best 4 years for me. And part of the reason it was the best 4 years for me, it was because it was the first place where I could be Black and smart at the same time. That I wasn't accused of trying to be white because I was smart. And I could go as fast and as hard as I wanted to, and everybody could keep up. And there were people who were faster than I was. So, I really met people who were really, really smart, and and they were well-rounded, which was also wonderful. You could meet somebody who was pre-med and getting straight A's and pre-med, and also played intramural volleyball, and also did theater or sang in the choir and went to Black church. And I mean, it was just wonderful. And then I went to law school because of a lack of good career counseling, basically. And knew pretty quickly that I really did not like lawyers, and didn't enjoy their conversation. And so I became an educator, and I found out that was my tribe, that educators were my tribe, and really enjoyed the rhythms of a university campus and working with adult learners, because I was at a public policy school. So everyone who started was at least 22 years old. So I always said they brought me problems I could solve, like, I need a tutor for econ, or I've got 3 semesters worth of classes and 2 semesters worth of money, or I need to graduate this semester and I forgot to file my paperwork. Not my roommate is bulimic.
Right.
Oh, I got drunk at a party and I don't remember what happened after that. They were past all of that,
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because you have your doctorate in the history of U.S. foreign policy. I was like, wow, this person's smart. Like when I read that, I was just like, okay, never mind. You made it through Yale. You made it through Stanford Law. And oh, by the way, you just happened to get your Ph.D. in the history of U.S. foreign policy. So
well, it's funny because people say like, well, after all those, really Ivy Leagues, so then you went to Ohio State. Like, like getting a Ph.D. from Ohio State is like nothing, because like, well, it's Ohio State. It's not, And that was home for me. And I was taking a $40,000 pay cut to go to school full time. And I knew if I went home, I wouldn't starve to death, Right. So it was really, I really wanted to get my doctorate so that I could continue to follow the career path, really to a presidency, actually, of a university. And then I realized I wasn't willing. By the time I finished my doctorate, I was 40, and I just wasn't willing to make the geographic moves for the career. I wasn't willing to go to, Ames, Iowa for 3 years to be a dean, and then to Columbia, Missouri for 3 years to be a provost. And I really always wanted to live in Washington, D.C. I just thought it was such an exciting place to be, but also because I decided I preferred to be a small fish in a big pond as opposed to a big fish in a small pond. And in Columbus, I was such a rarity, someone who was not married, didn't have children, highly educated. Everyone looked at me like I was strange. Whereas here, there are lots of me's. There are lots of me's in Washington, D.C. So I decided that, I liked being in a place where there were lots of me's that I could connect with, and people who understood my journey, And so I've been here since 2000, and I absolutely love it.
Good for you. Wow. Yeah. I love hearing people's backstories, and I love hearing kind of, the one thing I was like, wow, when you said when you were at Yale that you were able to be Black and smart at the same time. That was like really a gift in a lot of ways for someone of your caliber at that time to find that environment.
Yes.
And so that really set you on your path. Now, fast forward to today. So at some point you were laid off.
Yes.
And so talk about that experience and how it's now like launched you into this LinkedIn driver instructor that you are, and that it's a very much a niche, but
Yes.
you have exploded. You have
Yes.
exploded from your kitchen table, literally.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it literally started around my kitchen table. And people say, well, what's your business plan? And I say, my business plan is to say yes to what the universe brings me. And this is what the universe has brought me. And I was laid off in the summer of 2015. And I started looking for workforce development classes because I hadn't looked for a job in a while, and I wanted to, make sure that I was doing all the current things, taking advantage of current technology, that, everything that I was doing wasn't dated,
Right.
and because age is an issue when you're over 50 and job seeking. And there really wasn't much, frankly, for people who were over 50 in Montgomery County, but there was this one program, and they had a LinkedIn module where they had a Gen Xer come in and basically water hose you with everything they knew about LinkedIn in 90 minutes as they raced through this PowerPoint. And I watched the women in my cohort check out. I mean, at about the 35-minute mark, their eyes glazed over and they just kind of said, this is overwhelming. I'm not doing this. And you just saw it. And I had the sort of opposite reaction, which was, wow, this thing is really powerful. This is the answer. This is what we need, because finding a job is all about networking. And we're at a stage in our lives when our networks are contracting because people are retiring and people are moving. And this is a way to open them back up exponentially without leaving your house. So you don't have to go to these big networking events and, stand around and just throw your card out and try to think of things to say. And I thought, no, we have to do this. And also, one of the knocks against older workers is that we don't want to learn anything new and that we're not tech savvy. And I thought, well, that, being on LinkedIn shows that that's not true, because there was no LinkedIn 20 years ago.
Right.
And you have to do it on a computer. So we have to do this. We have to do this. So I said, ladies, grab your laptops, come to my house, and we are going to figure this out. And so I did the first session, and some of the ladies who couldn't attend called me shortly after and said, we heard it was wonderful. Can you do one for us? And I said, sure. And they called me back and said, well, can I invite my friend? Can I invite my friend Stacy? She really needs this too. And can I invite my friend Allison? Or she really needs this too. I said, sure, the more the merrier, come on. And then when I did the third one, they said, we're sitting here and we're drinking your coffee and we're eating your fruit. You really ought to charge us something. And I thought to myself, people are offering me money. I'm going to take it. Maybe there's a business here. Mm-hmm. And there's 75 million baby boomers. Mm-hmm. And there's so many of us who are very frustrated with where we are in our professional lives, because we were raised by by depression babies who raised us for a find a good job economy.
Yes.
That doesn't exist anymore.
Yes.
An economy that says if you do your job and show loyalty, the company will show loyalty to you. And by the time you're 55, you'll be on the glide path to retirement with a pension. And that economy does not exist. And we are very frustrated and very angry because we feel like I played by the rules. I went out and got this great education and I got that job and they discarded me. Mm-hmm. And I just thought I have to help people adjust to this new economy because it really is an opportunity. And the social media only knows what you tell it.
Correct.
So you can reinvent yourself. And we are probably the best educated generation this country has ever seen and is likely to see, because my friends could not afford to send their kids to Yale.
Right.
They went to state schools because that's what they could afford. And so, and we are lifelong learners and we're very smart. And so I'm just really passionate about helping my generation reinvent to succeed in this new economy. And I think, we really can take advantage of things like LinkedIn to do that, So that's how I got to where I am.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so, that was probably 3 years ago or so. And you've probably helped hundreds, if not thousands of people who would have never, well, first of all, you identified a gap in the marketplace that these workforce development centers really, by throwing some millennial at you with 50 PowerPoint slides is not the way to teach.
Right.
That's not how adult learners want to learn. And people are in different, levels of sort of like competency in technology. And so you've got to kind of bring people along from where they are. And I think you recognize that.
Absolutely. I mean, baby boomers have a different learning style. We did not grow up with virtual virtual media and computer games and things like that. So we're used to talking to a human being. We do not want to type our question into a chat room. Right. We want to look a human being in the eye and say, what do I push? What do I click? I learned that a lot of them, their LinkedIn profile was actually created by their child. They didn't know what was on it. They didn't know how to manipulate it. And so, and unfortunately, LinkedIn is not as intuitive as Facebook, but it's also not rocket science. So if someone just tells you what's behind the 3 little dots, then you can figure it out. But you can also just spend a lot of time spinning your wheels if someone, if you aren't initially at least guided by someone who knows what they're doing. And I tell people it's the difference between being driven somewhere versus driving yourself. If you're driven somewhere, you probably can't get back because you're not paying attention. Right. But if you drive yourself, you usually can, because your mind makes little mental roadmaps. Oh, I made a left at the 7-Eleven. I made a right at the stop sign. I made another left at the gas station. And that's the way it is. We slow down, we relax. You can get up and get a cup of coffee, and you do it yourself. I never touch your keyboard, and I just help guide you through it so that you feel comfortable with it. I spend the first 45 minutes on all of the security features because a lot of the women had concerns about, the security of their information. Most people never even visit the back office on LinkedIn. They don't even know it's there, but you can set up a 2-step verification process to get on. You can associate a particular email address with it that you only use for your job search. So there are lots of things that you can do. And once they feel secure, and that their information is secure and that they can decide, they have control over what information goes out about them and what comes in, then they're comfortable manipulating it. And I tell them, yes, the default is, a lot of information going out and a lot of information coming in, but there are valves that you can shut off to decide how much goes out and how much comes in. And that just gives them a much more sense of comfort to be able to feel like, okay, I want to do this, I can do this. So I'm just very excited. I love that light bulb moment when they go, wow, I can do that. I can find all of the alumni from my school who live in the Washington, D.C. area and where they work. Yes, you can. And you don't have to be on the paid program to do that, So, it's a wonderful, wonderful tool.
Yeah. So I'm sure you've got tons of success stories too of people that have been able to use that platform. So talk a little bit about that. That must bring you so much joy.
It does. It brings me so much joy. And as I said, I love to see the light bulb go off. And this one guy said, man, you just lit up a whole damn chandelier. A light bulb. But one of my favorite stories is one of my early students who actually came 3 separate times. She had been in commercial banking for 30 years because she had always wanted to be an interior designer, a commercial interior designer, but her parents were like, I don't know what that is. I'm not going to pay for that, but there will always be banks. So why don't you go into banking? And so she did for 30 years, and then she got laid off. And her husband, bless his heart, said, okay, I'm going to let you pursue this interior design thing for 2 years. I'll carry the bills. She went out, she got her associate's degree, and that's when I met her, when she was in her associate's degree program, which is another wonderful fact that we have now, which is you do not have to go back to get a 4-year degree when you want to reinvent yourself. There are certificate programs that allow you to be current, that you can do in a year or 18 months. So you don't have to go into a bunch of debt, spend 4 years and all of that. So she did an associate's degree program in commercial interior design, and she came to my boot camp and my driving lessons. And we positioned her profile to speak of nothing but interior design. She followed interior design companies, office furniture companies. She posted about interior design. She put her portfolio from her associate's degree program on. Everything on her page spoke to what she was going to do for her next employer. And that's the one thing I tell people, if they know nothing else, that they learn nothing else from me, that they understand that your LinkedIn profile is not your resume and a photo, because your resume is entirely backward looking. It's just a list of what you've done for your previous employers. And when people come to LinkedIn, they want to know what you can do for them as your potential next employer. It's entirely forward looking. So we positioned her for her job as a commercial interior designer. And that is what she is today. She had her first job before she even graduated. And of course, a lot of that had to do with the professors, of course, and the internships. But what LinkedIn helped her do was become a part of that community before she was actually hired. So she was not a stranger to them because she had many people in common with them. She was in the same groups with them on LinkedIn. They followed the same companies. So she spoke their language. So in inviting her in was sort of a formality. She was already among them by the time they actually gave her a job. So that's one of my favorite success stories because it was such a radical shift, you know.
Right. But, I love that. So, I just, it's interesting. I don't know exactly what you were doing right before you got laid off, but now you have been positioned now as an expert in LinkedIn that people can seek out, as well as your workforce development knowledge, right?
Yes.
So you reinvented yourself.
Absolutely. And it's never too late. You can always, reinvent yourself for the marketplace. I have a friend who says you cannot have worked as long as we have worked and lived as long as we have lived without having some marketable skill that you can now market in this new economy. And I totally believe that. It's really just adopting an entrepreneurial mindset, which we, in the past really didn't have. But if we understand that now, I think we can totally succeed, in this new economy. We just have to.
Yeah. Have you ever read the book Body of Work by Pam Slim?
No, I've not. But I'm going to write that.
So you need to read that. So I had been laid off, and someone told me to read that book, and it totally shifted my mindset around. I had always identified myself with my employer. I'm an employer of X company, and I do Y job. Right, that was my identity. And after I read this book, her philosophy is, in the new economy, we all produce a body of work.
Yes.
And that as part of our body of work, we just happen to get a paycheck from company ABC doing ABC type of work. And that when you shift your mindset, because it is a mindset shift, especially as you're trying to reinvent yourself over 50 or over 40 even, that when you start to think of yourself as your own personal brand and in the gig economy, opportunities will come to you because you have that body of work and that you're known in the world for, I'm a really good copywriter, I'm a really good attorney. And it is shifting your mindset to be much more entrepreneurial and less of what our parents and my grandparents went through, which was just like you said, get the education, go to work for the company, stay there until a certain age, get the pension, get the gold
Yes.
watch. And, you know, I think 2008 is when it really hit me. That was the first time I had lost my job, and it was a month before the market crashed. And so for me, that was a very, very large awakening in terms
Yes.
of having confidence in me and my personal skill set and brands. And so how do you help people when they come to your workshops, they come to your boot camps, they come to your, you know, events? How do you get them to shift that mindset and know that LinkedIn is their friend and a tool?
Yes, yes. Well, you know, and it's interesting you were talking about this. And I say to people, you know, the default on LinkedIn is your current or your immediate past position. So you'll see director, you know, Aetna Health, you know, whatever their last position was. And I say, all that is advertising for them.
Right.
And also, position titles are not universal. So a communication specialist in one setting could actually be a receptionist in another setting. So what I really want to know is what's your skill set? What do you offer across employers? The thing that you are really good at, that no matter what the job description is, people come to you for that anyway, because clearly you're good at it. And so what is it that you're really good at and that you're really passionate about? That should be the headline under your name on LinkedIn that follows you all around, because that's what you offer. And so, so it really is very much skill-based. The other thing that's really hard for people in our generation to wrap themselves around is that experience is not as important as your skills. So they want to start off with 30 years of professional experience. And I say, okay, first of all, most people find things on their phones first. And you have even less real estate to make your case on a phone than you do on a laptop. And you have now expended about 100 characters basically telling me nothing except you're old and you worked.
I love it. It's true.
It's true.
That is awesome. I love it.
So what I really want to know is what you're really good at. And if you're really good at it, I don't care whether you've been good at it, you know, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, or 20 years. You know, if you're really good, I want you. Ageism is real. I accept that. But I also think that we give it way too much power. And some of our wounds are self-inflicted, like people who tell me they're in marketing and communications, and then I say, well, do you do social media? No. Well, how can you be in marketing and communications in this day and age and not do social media? I mean, I don't get that, you know. So, you know, we have to be willing to update our skills, you know, and it doesn't have to be all of them. People say, oh, well, do you do Facebook? No, I don't teach people Twitter. I don't teach people Instagram. It's hard enough to keep up with the changes that they keep making to LinkedIn.
Right.
But if I'm going to say I'm a LinkedIn expert, then I have to keep up with them. So that's what I do. You know, I really believe a niche will make you rich. And as I said, there's 75 million baby boomers, so I don't think I'm going to run out of them anytime soon.
Right.
You know. But
So,
I think it does help to learn from someone who also has some gray hair. It just gives you credibility with other people who have gray hair, that if you did it, they can do it too. And that you understand what their struggles are as opposed to someone who's 20. And I'll give you a perfect example. I went to a workshop, Job Seeking in the Digital Age, I believe it was called, that was sponsored by AARP. And the trainers were maybe 35. And I thought, of all organizations to be reinforcing the message that only younger people are tech savvy, it should not be AARP. And I was very disappointed. And I'm sure this was a contract, you know, so the contractor chose the trainers, but AARP should have been sensitive to that, to say to them, do not send, you know, because any competent person could have taught. There was nothing in there in that workshop that a competent 50-year-old or more could not have handled. So I was really kind of upset with them for that, reinforcing that message,
So I have a question. I have a LinkedIn question for you.
Okay.
So if someone's a more sophisticated LinkedIn, has a more sophisticated presence on LinkedIn, and they're in career transition maybe right now, or want to transition, what are some of the things right now that you get rewarded for on LinkedIn? Is it, posting videos or?
Well, video's very hot on LinkedIn right now. Lot of videos. The thing that you get most rewarded for is not so much your content, but the reaction to your content.
Got it. The
Are
engagement.
people commenting, liking, sharing, responding? Those are the things that you get rewarded for on LinkedIn. And that's the thing that I tell people. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. People, it's amazing to me. There are over 560 million profiles on LinkedIn. And people say, well, I put a profile on, but, it just hasn't really been helpful to me. I mean, I haven't really gotten any offers or anything from it. And I say, have you done anything except post the profile? No. Well, there are 560 million of them, so that's not going to get you anything. You really have to be active. You have to engage.
Right.
And so, so it's very important to be, I say, if a recruiter comes in to type a skill set, that they're looking for a person with a particular skill set, the order that the people LinkedIn presents to them is not random. It's not alphabetical. It's based on activity. It's based on how complete your profile is. It's based on your activity, the reaction that your activity is getting. Those are the things that will shape that list. So again, if you have a profile, or if there are 225 people who have that skill set that they're looking for, and you haven't been on to do anything in the last year, you're number 225. But if you were just recently on there posting and people were responding to it, then you're number one. So it really is based on your engagement with LinkedIn.
That's a good tip. I think that's a good tip, because if there's 560 million profiles out there, that's a lot of people
worldwide,
and the completeness of your profile, and also I think updating your profile if things shift, or just even like when I started podcasting. I never had that anywhere in my profile that I had a podcast, right?
That's right.
So, my engagement on LinkedIn, I post my episodes every Monday morning, and it's really interesting because people who now want to connect with me because I'm a podcaster.
Yes.
So I've got this new skill set, and I've got this new body of work content that I'm putting out there. I've created this Brave Girl platform to showcase, women's empowerment, women in the world. That was all sort of very intentional, that I wanted to bring on the show women of all different dimensions of diversity and all kinds of different fields at all different ages, all kinds of backgrounds. And, I'm getting the rewards of that now through the downloads of my podcast.
Yes.
People are now pitching me that they want to be on the podcast, right? And so, my intention was to grow my network through my podcasting, right? But it is about that engagement, and it is about,
sharing good information that people want to use.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I had started out, I wanted to be a blogger, and quite get myself motivated to write the weekly blogs and stuff like that. And I thought, I love talking to people. I love meeting new people. I love learning new things. And I thought podcasting is the right medium for me.
Yes. And,
it's just as much work, if not more. However, I'm enjoying it so much.
Exactly. Was that if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. You're willing to do the hard work. You're willing because it gives something back to you. And again, I don't really do much with millennials or younger people because I don't get the same reward. Some people do, but I don't in particular. I get my reward from seeing people like me, older people, embrace this tool. And I love it. Like I said, when that light bulb moment happens, I'm geeked the rest of the day. So I got a testimonial from someone, and she called me out of the blue, and she just like, I have to talk to you. I have to tell you how my business is exploding because of the tips you gave me. And she called me, and it was totally unsolicited. And I said, look, you need to record this. Please record, because I'm going to use it in my class. I teach at Montgomery College. I teach LinkedIn for entrepreneurs and small business leaders. And I said, I'm going to use your audio file at the beginning of my class. And she says, this is totally unsolicited, but my business has absolutely exploded because of what Elisse told me to do. And so I love that. I just absolutely love it.
So speaking about somebody like that, who's an entrepreneur who, you've given them your wisdom and you've given them their best, playbook for LinkedIn, and then they went and implemented it. Do you ever get to the point where you've kind of tapped out, or the person that's doing the work that you instruct them to do they ever get kind of tapped out and they're like, nothing new is coming? Or like, do you ever hit that wall, like you've arrived? Or is it always, because LinkedIn's always changing, there's always something new?
There's always something new. As I said, for example, like I said, video is new. 2 or 3 years ago, no one was posting videos on LinkedIn. So, waves come in and then they go. And Microsoft is always making changes to keep it fresh. You can give people kudos now, which is a whole different new thing than recommendations, which wasn't there. So, that's the thing about online platforms and social media. They're always testing new things. There's a whole LinkedIn marketplace that people don't know about, where you can actually get contract work. People know about Freelancer and Fiverr. LinkedIn has LinkedIn Pro.
Right.
So there's just always something new, that people, they're throwing out there to keep it fresh. So I haven't run into anybody yet that says that
said they hit the wall. Okay, good. Well, that's good. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I have a friend who she teaches courses for LinkedIn. Through I guess they have some kind of university or academy that they sell then to companies. So she's a expert in unconscious bias and diversity and inclusion. And so LinkedIn hired her to create a whole curriculum, basically, that then, she gets paid by the download, basically, kind of like a Netflix model. And they flew her out to LinkedIn in California. They professionally produced her presentations, and then companies buy licenses to then use that as part of their training and curriculum development.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I know that that's like another opportunity that people have, that if they are, an expert in something or a thought leader in something, they can then go and actually produce, these courses similar to Teachable or Skillshare or some of those other platforms.
And they have Linda, and there's all these open online courses. So I mean, that's the great thing about the time that we live in. My husband and I talk about YouTube University all the time, because you can find videos on YouTube about everything. I mean, one of my goals is to learn American Sign Language, and they have great videos on YouTube on how to learn sign language. My husband has learned to do everything from fix a Dyson's vacuum cleaner to fix a washing machine on YouTube. So, it's great. And some of these courses are, available to you from really top-notch universities, so there's just a lot that's available now. You don't have to spend a lot of money anymore to update your skills. It's really cool. We live in a great time for that.
Yeah. So, the other thing I noticed on your background is that you're very active in the community, with policy advocacy, economic development, workforce training, all kinds of things. And you actually you were recently nominated to serve on your board of elections. So, talk about some of your outside interest, and I'm sure it ties back to some of your earlier days at Yale, Stanford, and Ohio State, and some of those interests interests that you had and the education that you have. So how are you using those skills out in the community in sort of the greater DC area?
Yes, well, as I said, I live in Montgomery County, Maryland, and for a long time I lived in downtown Silver Spring, and I downtown Silver Spring was very small to me because Silver Spring was basically downtown, and I really never left downtown. And Montgomery County has an east-west divide.
Okay.
Most of the economic development, the resources for businesses, the growth, the amenities are all in West County. Where Bethesda, Maryland is, Chevy Chase, Maryland, Gaithersburg, Rockville, Potomac. But I live in the East County. About 4 years ago, I moved out of downtown Silver Spring, further up into East County, and discovered it was totally different. It was a totally different landscape. And there were just some real challenges here as far as economic and workforce development and political action. And I thought, and I really believe that if you complain about something, the last sentence of your complaint should be what you intend to do to make it better. Mm-hmm. Can't just reel off your complaint and then walk away from it and expect somebody else to do something.
Right.
So when I moved to East County and saw the challenges, I said, what can I do to be a more effective advocate for East County? And I joined a program called Leadership Montgomery. Mm-hmm. And they had a division for senior leaders, people who are over 55. And so I did Senior Leadership Montgomery. I graduated in June. And I thought, and it was a great opportunity to understand how the county runs, who's making the decisions, how decisions are being made, all across the board, whether it's schools, politics, housing, whatever the issue is. It gave you a really nice overview of how decisions are being made in the county, so that you can be, again, a more effective advocate by understanding who you're supposed to be talking to about different issues. And so we had a pretty difficult November election in terms of some of the lines and at some of our polling places in East County. In fact, one of the county council members actually went on Twitter and compared one of our polling places to voter suppression in Georgia and Kansas. And, there were 3-hour lines and only one scanner. And it was just, a lot of provisional ballots being cast. And I thought, okay, we need to fix this. And I looked at the Board of Elections and there was no one from East County on the Board of Elections. And I thought, okay, there's an opportunity here. Mm-hmm. And so I ran and and the Democratic Central Committee votes on who they want to nominate. And I, won the race. And so now it has to be approved by the governor and the state legislature. So that's why I say I was nominated. I'm not actually on the board until the governor and the state legislature approve. But I do have the support of the, Democratic Central Committee. So, but you again, you have to be willing to step up. If you see something and you don't like it, then what are you going to do? What are you going to do to address it?
Right.
So I'm on the East County Citizens Advisory Board, which helps me also plug into where the challenges are, where the issues are. And so I'm very excited about what we can do to help East County grow. And I may be very old by the time all of it happens, because these things take time. You can't change overnight. You can't, create development overnight. But I do think that we are very much moving in the right direction because people are getting engaged, and that's what you have to do. So, like I said, I'm an optimist by nature. So I just, I had a conversation with someone recently who said, the powers that be are not interested in doing business and development in East County. And I said, you know what, I can't feel that way because I live here.
Right.
And I refuse to give up on this part of the county. So, and
Good for you. Good
so,
for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Well, I'm very, I come from a politically active family. I was knocking on doors and putting literature in doors for candidates when I was in elementary school. When I was 11 years old. And my mother was actually the first African-American woman to sit on city council in Columbus, Ohio. And she held that seat for 9 years. She was elected twice. And I really learned a lot from her experience.
Mm-hmm.
She was a real trailblazer in a lot of ways. She was the first African-American female to sit on a paying board. And she started a wonderful group called Corporate Sisters, which was for African-American executives who came to town. And they needed to know things like, where can I find a good gynecologist? And if you're the only one in the room and all the other people are men in suits, you're not going to turn to them and say, hey, you know?
Right. Right. What a wonderful.
Find a good hairdresser or a gynecologist, or
right. Right.
So
what a great role model.
Yeah. So she was wonderful. She's just and I'm very, very proud of her. She was a wonderful role model for me. So and she did all of this with a high school education.
Wow.
So and she came from a single parent home.
Right.
So she was born in a house. In a town that had 850 people at the last census. It's still there, but it only has 850 people in it. So she came a very, very long way. It's amazing. Like I said, my mother she finished high school, went to Ohio State for a couple of quarters, but then ran out of money because she was, from a single parent home. And my dad was a functional illiterate. He could write his name, but that's about it. Worked in a steel mill for most of his life. So like I said, my dad was a functional illiterate. My mom was a college dropout. And then I went to Yale and Stanford. And
got your Ph.D.
Yeah, so, big change in one generation,
Yeah. So I always ask my guests, what's the bravest thing that you've ever done and how does it inspire you today? So if you're to really look back over all the things that you've done and all the places that you've been and all the activities you've been involved in, what would you say that really brave moment is where you dug deep into your courage and really did something, took a risk, whatever it may be? What would you say that would be?
I gave this a lot of thought, and I decided that when I decided not to be a lawyer was the bravest thing, because I got a lot of pushback from a lot of people. You've invested 3 years of your life in this, all of that student debt. I mean, when I left undergrad, I was $10,000 in debt. When I left law school, I was $30,000 in debt,
Right.
Oh my gosh, do you think you'll ever use that degree, And what I would say to them was, I wasn't happy being a lawyer. And they would say, and I'd say, what part of I wasn't happy don't you understand?
Mm-hmm.
But it really did take, and my mom was very proud to say, my daughter's a lawyer. Who doesn't want to say their child is a lawyer? But it wasn't right for me. It just wasn't. And it just took, and I had a lot of friends who were lawyers that I went to school with,
Mm-hmm.
I had gone to Stanford, so, there was just so much pushback. And I said, I listened to the voice inside of me saying, this isn't right for you. You're not going to be happy doing this. This is not your tribe. And it really freed me to go find what it is I really wanted to be, which was an educator.
Right.
And I would not have found that unless I'd had the courage to say, this isn't it. And that a decision that I made at 22 to go to law school was not going to shape the rest of my life, that it didn't have to be that way. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks for sharing, because I think sometimes people hear the whisper, and they know that that's not what they're supposed to do, but they do it anyway.
Yes.
Or it's somebody else's dream, whether it's one of their parents or,
Yes.
and they don't have the courage or the bravery inside themselves to say, did it, but it's not in alignment with who I really am and the purpose of why God put me on this earth, and in order to be in true integrity and alignment, I need to go find that tribe. And I need, the fact that you recognize that you needed to find your tribe, it wasn't that you had the courage to say, okay, I'm going to go find my tribe. You found it, and then you became this educator. I mean, I think that's amazing, because as an educator, you're able to touch so many people. Thousands and thousands of people. And now your niche is LinkedIn and the over 55. And I'm in awe that you were able to figure all that out, make it happen. And now the universe is rewarding you with these opportunities.
Yes. And I think if we could all just I think that's what happens when you live your true purpose. When you say, I'm going to listen to the voice inside of me and find my true purpose, that's the reward that comes from it. And it's not easy, but if you do it, the reward is amazing. It really is. I've never regretted a minute of it. So I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed in that regard.
Well, I just want to thank you for coming on the show today. I know that you're going to, touch people that are listening to the podcast, people that maybe are afraid to try LinkedIn, don't realize that they need to reinvent themselves, or maybe they're facing ageism, or, wherever they are in their kind of career journey. And so I'm going to put in the show notes all of your information about your programs and how to get in touch with you and how to find you, because I'm sure some of our listeners are going to want to connect with you and possibly attend some of your trainings and your teachings. And I know you have lots of them in lots of different areas.
Yes.
And so I want to make you available to my community of brave girls that listen to my podcast, because I feel like we all need to just kind of help each other out in this new economy. And,
yes.
It's like 10,000 people a day are turning, into baby boomers. It's a huge number. And then you've got Gen X right behind it.
Yes.
And so while we might be a little bit more tech savvy as Gen Xers, my question was really about, do you ever hit that wall where it's like, okay, my profile's out there, I'm active, I'm engaged, but it makes me encouraged to know that this platform's out there and it's always changing and growing and evolving, and that
yes.
I can find other opportunities as I age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge, all of your wisdom.
Thank you, Tracy, for inviting me. This has been great. I really have enjoyed this experience. So thank you so much for creating this wonderful opportunity to connect with other people in your audience and with you. And I look forward to keeping in touch.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracym.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracym.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.